welcome to the Anti-Heroes podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. You know, I want to comment. I want to make a comment today, folks, about the guitar community at large. And I will be the first to say that I have my own bubble. I have my own circle, my own retreat that I call my own personal guitar world. But I just noticed how gatekeepery and exclusionary and that's one of the motivations of doing this podcast in the first place, was to sort of highlight folks that I felt like weren't getting enough recognition and praise for what they do. Some folks that I've interviewed absolutely do, but I still don't think it's enough. But I have noticed that guitar music predominantly is rock-based. That could be an ignorant thing to say because, of course, there is jazz guitar and there's, folk and there's things like that. But for loud rock guitar music, that's what I'm talking about. And the genre, the style is something that's been in threat of going away, coming back. It seems to always sort of persevere. There's been the argument made that if a kid goes to a music store and there's a machine that they can make a song that night, or a guitar that they're going to have to spend months learning how to play, well, the machine's going to win every time because of attention spans and things like that. I shudder to think that if I had been given that choice when I was a kid, what I would have chosen. I'm so glad I took the hard road. I guess my point is I noticed that guitar music is persevering, but it's taken on different forms with the sort of rise of social media guitar players, YouTube guitar players. You can make music and make a song, make your own universe and just put it out immediately. But sometimes that music sounds different. Sometimes the guitar playing is very different. Sometimes the guitar playing is rooted in all kinds of other different types of music. And the term gets used that if things that are out of vogue, sort of quote unquote boomerish, or, solo styles of the 80s and 90s, and how much fun people are poking at all of that stuff. But I just feel like it becomes real gatekeepery and it becomes real exclusionary and it becomes real, I don't know. I guess I started playing guitar because I didn't fit in with anyone else. And this became my thing. And if I met somebody else that played guitar, they were my friend just immediately because we shared this thing. We took the road less traveled. And that's what it's always been to me. And it just seems like with the sort of torchbearers of the new guard, so to speak, it seems like there's only one way to do it. And this is the new way. And a lot of these people aren't playing live music. A lot of these people have only ever used guitar plugins and sort of amp profilers. Never used a Marshall stack, never used a Marshall full stack. And I feel like it's sort of scoffed at as like, that's your grandpa's shit or your dad's shit or something like that. And I just feel like that's so close-minded, really, when it seems like we're playing music and we're all playing guitar. And why not keep an open mind to everybody's way of doing this and whatever works for them? I'm all ears. I want to hear how this person is expressing themselves, because we all belong to this secret fraternity. We all picked up a guitar and said, I'm going to go down this road and it's going to take me a long time to get there, but I'm going to get there. Anyway, okay, rant over. I just wanted to bring that up. It does segue into my guest here today. My guest here today is the amazing Mya Byrne. And once again, I have talked about Johnny Morales and his wonderful store, Oakland Guitars, many times. Johnny gave me Mya's contact, said, you need to talk to Mya. Mya is a gear nerd. You will have so much in common. And she's an amazing artist. And he did not prepare me for how blown away I was going to be by Mya and her music and her guitar playing. Jesus, man, he was right. And he was also very correct that Mya really knows her shit when it comes to gear. And we had so much to talk about. I feel like we could have talked for hours and hours. And I sincerely feel like I made a new friend, even though we haven't met each other in person yet. I do look forward to doing so. You're going to hear Mya talk a lot about her career and what got her here. She does have a record out called Rhinestone Tomboy that I think everybody should go check out. Anyway, I'll shut up right now and let you get into my interview with Mya Byrne. Hi, Mya. Mya.
Yeah.
Okay, my stupid
nice to meet you, Zach.
Nice to meet you as well. My stupid texting thing, I was thinking Maya, but Mya.
You know, it happens all the time. And I don't get pissed about it.
Mya, and we talked about this before, Mya or Me, so I can go for either one.
Yeah, Mimi is, that's what all the kids call me. You can call me that too.
All the kids do it. Okay, so I've talked about him on this podcast, but Johnny Morales from Oakland Guitars, that amazing, wonderful shop.
We stand them so hard in this house.
He's a great, and he's probably listening because he listens to this podcast, which is so amazing. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Johnny. And Johnny just thought you and I would hit it off because you're a gear nerd as well, and I thought you would be perfect.
Let's be real, I'm a gear slut. Okay?
Like gear slut, I'll take it. Hey, I am as well. Fuck it. We'll say this podcast is for gear sluts. But this podcast is also to shine light on people that deserve light shined on them.
Thank you.
And don't always get that because, in this guitar world of ours, the same like 5 people get all the attention, let's face it. And I wanted people of every stripe and every type of music and every player. So anyway, what started you playing guitar?
Oof, I mean, it's like as far, what is it?
I know, right?
It's like Goodfellas. It's like as far back as I can remember. But seriously, I remember being a kid and like just picking up a tennis racket that was lying around the house and doing that thing. And we're around, we're in the same age bracket, so it's like I was like remembered when like the Muppet Show was on and like all of that stuff and. Just like watching like Janice play guitar. And then my parents are boomers and they just like had music everywhere. Yeah. And I always knew I wanted to play guitar. And I remember very distinctly being like 7, somebody being like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, I want to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. And like, I didn't really get an instrument like until I was like 10. Because they're like, oh, well, she wants to play guitar. We should like give her a viola. And I was like, I don't want to play viola. They're like, well, maybe she should get a flute. I'm like, I don't play flute. Yeah. Just give me a fucking guitar. And finally, they all relented. And like, I got a crappy Korean guitar, and I instantly started pissing off all of my neighbors.
That's good. That's good.
Little gorilla amp.
Yeah. I wonder how many people Janice influenced, because I have a profound memory of Janice as well. What I always remember is like Janice had a pretty good rendition of a Les Paul. And I remember, what's the bassist name? With the big mustache.
Zoot?
You couldn't see his eyes. No, Zoot was the saxophonist. What was it?
Oh, you're right.
And he had a Rickenbacker. Like he had a full... It was like somebody had really paid attention to it.
Here's an Easter egg of my life that I didn't even know. Is that I went to a house concert where like Craig Bickhart, who's a wonderful folk guitar player, was playing about 10 years ago. And there's a gentleman there. It's in my hometown, which is Maplewood, New Jersey. That's where I grew up. Like I've basically lived all over. My family's from like, New York and Texas and like Toronto and like they're all over the world. But this guy comes up to me and we just start talking. He's like, oh, like you look familiar and I'm not sure why. I'm like, well, I grew up here. And he's like, that's interesting. Where did you live? And I told him my address. He's like, I used to live behind you.
Whoa.
I was like, what? He's like, I used to live behind you. And I was like, that's interesting. And then the inevitable New York question, well, what do you do? And he's like, I built all of the guitars for the freaking Muppets.
No.
And specifically, because we were talking about Gibsons and Fenders, and he's just like, oh yeah, I had to like write to them and like get all the specs so that we could like make Janice's guitar perfect. I was like, you built Janice's guitar when I was a little baby running around the backyard? Ah!
Holy shit.
Isn't that crazy?
That's one of the coolest stories we've ever had on this podcast. Holy shit, that's amazing. When I was a kid, like when I started guitar, like came on my radar at 9, and then I was always like a specific little fucking weirdo like I am now. Yeah. And I remember paying attention to that, like, wow, how did they get thinking like it was a toy Gibson Les Paul and I was a smaller guy and I was like, maybe I could get one of those. I don't know, Holy shit, that's crazy.
I know. And like, it just blew my mind. And then, you remember the movie Adventures in Babysitting?
Yes.
There's Albert Collins. That's the first time I was ever exposed to Texas blues.
Oh, yeah.
Or ever saw a Telecaster, aside from like G. Smith and the Saturday Night Live Band. And that was like such a profound moment for me. And like very soon after seeing that came out when I was 9. And when I was like 10 or 11, after I finally started playing guitar, somewhere deep in the recesses of my mother's house, there is a VHS tape of me like wearing a denim jeans jacket with like a little pixie cut and like freaking a Bart Simpson pin on my freaking chest. Basically, I wrote a pastiche of the blues that he sings in that.
Really?
Yeah, it's
I'd
the
love to see
most.
that.
It was horribly embarrassing, but I remember I still talk to that teacher on Facebook, and he's just like, "You always had it in you." I was like, "Oh,
That's awesome.
sweet."
Yeah, guy Albert Collins, what a great player, man! And he always played with that capo, that really high up on like
I know.
the seventh fret. So it was all his stuff was super crazy. If you didn't know that, you're like, what the hell are you playing?
And he played in a minor. He's tuned to a minor.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is weird,
So-
like, because it's like I can like get with like Albert King tuning,
Yeah.
like, you know, I play that a lot, but like just usual like double drop D kind
Sure.
of stuff, and then, you know, top string bending, but like Albert Collins is something
he's
else.
he's something else. I did a thing at Berkeley, like a blues thing, and there was an Albert Collins part of it, and you had to learn like Iceman or one of his, you know, and I remember thinking like, God damn, this is fucking crazy to play it. Try to play it normally, you know, in like a normal tuned guitar. It's really hard. Anyway, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So your first bands, did you have first bands? What were they like? What were they called?
They were like embarrassing as fuck.
Well, they always are.
But can I curse on the
Of
podcast?
course, please.
God damn.
Yeah, yeah.
So some people did garage rock. I did like attic rock and basement rock.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I really got into Jimi Hendrix and like Zeppelin, but like really heavily into Jimi Hendrix
Yeah.
because I was always into like jazz and stuff. And so I got into the concept of like, you know, applying like jazz approach and improvisation into my guitar music extremely early, which is really lucky. You know, like I'd smoked joints and like we had like a reel-to-reel tape recorder that we had like the Grateful Dead and Live Dead on. And so my friend and I would like get high as fuck and just like sit there with like, he had a Mexican Strat and I had like whatever, I had a Telecaster and we'd just be like sitting there in my bedroom late at night smoking pot and like, you know, with air freshener because it was the 90s and like, you know, didn't want my mom to know
Right.
she knew the whole time. And just like playing along to Live Dead, and like I'd be in the basement with my friend Karen, and we'd be jamming on, you know, like Machine Gun, like super loud for like hours, and just like figuring stuff out. Like was really like just a vibe thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a lot of what my early bands were like. We didn't really perform, and I only started writing songs. It's funny because I actually. I just wrote a children's book.
Oh, amazing.
Which hopefully we'll find a publisher soon. But like, you know, and it talks about like how when I was a kid, I used to like explore songwriting through like walking around. And I never really wrote songs until I was 17 though. Like then I wrote a whole bunch of punk songs and I was like, I like had this tiny little punk band, and then I got into prog.
Me too.
And so like my first real band was super proggy. Like we were listening to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And
Good.
it was just. And then I went to Berklee College of Music and I got into soul and deep country, like deeper than I thought I was ever in for.
Right.
And because I was hanging out with Peter Wolf, who lives up in Boston.
Yeah.
And like he was like kind of like an impresario like to my band for a little while. And I had this band called Blue for Now, which we had like a handful of gigs up in Boston. And we didn't really do much of anything, but I got to like sit in with like the members of Morphine and like do some like really cool
That's
shit.
awesome.
Yeah, I got to play with fucking John Medeski. Like, this is 1999. This is like, you know, what's his name? Mark, goddamn, what is his name? From Morphine had died.
Oh, Mark
on deployment.
Sandman.
Mark Sandman
Yeah.
had just passed away. And I'd like
Yeah.
run into him maybe once at the Middle East. And like, because like Pete was close with him. And Pete was like, hey, you want to get up on stage and back me up on this Morphine song? You know, in front of like thousands of people at his memorial concert. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And it's like,
That's amazing.
that was so weird and also just really beautiful.
That's amazing. And I love
Yeah.
your music taste is all over the place, which it should be. You know, I believe everybody. It's so disappointing to me when somebody listens to like a type of music, and maybe that's the type of music they play, and that's all they care about, and you know, and they're fine, and maybe they have the career doing it. Good for them. But it's so limiting to me. You said prog rock, and you know, some of my favorite music of all time is the Peter Gabriel Genesis stuff. It's just the
God,
best.
it's so weird.
It is. I love it though. You said also jazz and prog. Are you a John McLaughlin like Mahavishnu Orchestra person?
I'm really into like John McLaughlin, like, you know, when he's like jamming with Jimi Hendrix and like
Oh,
and like
yeah.
his early stuff when he's like doing like really out there shit with Miles, you
Yeah.
know, like I'm really like, you know, an on the corner Miles Davis
Sure.
fan. You know, when it comes to like guitar stuff, I really love Grant Green.
Oh, okay.
I love John McLaughlin, but I never really got into Mahavishnu, which kind of surprises me considering the other weird stuff I'm into.
Well, you know,
You know?
your tattoo, your birds there. There's the birds of
yeah.
fire, and they look like those birds. It's an album cover, and it looks just like those birds.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's so funny. These are red-tailed hawks.
Oh, maybe the red tail hawk's on the cover of Birds of Fire. Who knows? Who could ever be really sure?
But it's like, let's just pick the first like three things off of my record
Okay, go.
rack. We got "Walking My Cat Named Dog" by Norma Tanega.
Great.
This is such a good.
I was just reading up on her the other day, actually.
She is such a weirdo. Oh, my girl Jamie Wyatt. Oof.
Haven't heard.
Jamie's a pal.
Haven't heard.
You need to check out this album.
Okay.
This is so
Jamie
good.
Wyatt, fill me in.
Like Jamie is a contemporary of mine in the sort of queer country soul thing, and this is one of the first thing that I've heard Jamie do that like their last thing was like Shooter Jennings produced.
Oh,
an
wow.
album called Neon Cross, and so this was produced by Adrian from Black Pumas.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic record. And then we got, I'm taking off albums I've played on because apparently they're all up front. But this is Stephen Stills Manassas.
I have it as my dad's favorite record. Love it.
Yeah. And then
So good.
what do we got? And then Modest Freaking Mouse. Why not?
Oh,
Yeah, but
good.
yeah. And
Keep going.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Great.
It's just go. And you know,
That Manassas
They're all
record
falling.
is so good.
there's always something new I find on it.
It's so good.
And I think that's a good jumping off point too, just because like Steven Stills is kind of the original gear slut.
Absolutely.
When it comes to guitar stuff. I mean, like, you know, some people were into gadgets and whatever, but like, here's a guy who's literally, if you read the CSN books, he's talking about like, well, I obviously need the Firebird for this song, and I obviously need the Telecaster for this song, and I obviously need like this Les Paul for this song with this Les Paul for the others. I'm like,
Yeah, it's nuts.
I'm like, dude, I show up to a gig with like a guitar and a cable and maybe a freaking fuzz
Yeah,
pedal.
we'll have to make it work. Well, and you know, and he's such a perfect guitar player. Everything he ever did was so tasteful, so exactly what the song needed. Never overplayed. Well, yeah, what a great fucking player. Well, they just made great players back then, though.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is the world he came out of too. Like he comes out of like similarly like a really diverse background. Like I grew up like, you know, with a lot of, you know, different influences because my parents both listened to like a lot of like Stax kind of stuff and the Beatles and John Coltrane, and my dad was really like a classical music nerd too. And so you get all that, and like he's got a lot of, you know, down in Florida where he grew up, he's listening to a lot of like weird like Cuban music, not weird Cuban music, but he's like just things you wouldn't be thinking about. It's that whole, you know, and all of the other stuff that like is in that like sort of like, you know, Gulf of Mexico kind of region where it's kind of a melting pot. And then here in New York, and then he comes up to New York and he's like, you know, learning folk music and then like going across the country and like meeting all these other cats and just learning how to play in a very specific and different way that's completely his own.
Sure.
And he's on so many different, he's playing bass on Use Me by Bill Withers,
Yeah.
you know, it's like,
Yeah.
he's a genius.
Are you familiar with the Super Session record with Al Cooper?
Oh my God, of
Amazing.
course.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Also, the story behind that record is so funny.
Did you see the new Dylan biopic?
I haven't seen it yet. They did film it on my friend's street in Jersey
No
City.
shit. Well, there's a guy that plays Al Cooper, and you know, because he was in that band that, you know, whatever. But yeah, goddamn, what a great record. Well, and also, why am I fucking having a brain fart? He's one of my favorite guitar players. Why am I? He's part of the Super Session. It's Al Cooper, Stephen Stills.
Oh, well, Harvey Brooks is on that record as playing bass.
Why am I? He's one of my favorite guitar players.
Oh, Michael
Michael
Bloomfield.
Bloomfield. God damn it. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm like, what? I'm like, of course. Yeah, I mean, so Bloomfield like gets sick, otherwise known as like I had a massive hangover or whatever, and doesn't show up for the booked session.
Yeah.
And they do the second side of the record.
There's a guy that plays him in the movie. He looks a lot like him, actually. Well, so what you started you on, like, when did you kind of start writing songs for yourself and find yourself as a singer and like really put yourself out there that way?
Was kind of part of it's kind of like a sad story. Like it was that I always loved singing, and I was always a singer, and more than anything, like I always had a song in my heart. And like I said, I would like walk home from school as a little kid and just make up songs and sing them to myself. I found a Polaroid recently of like a fake recording studio I built in my basement out of like, I don't know if you remember Constructs. Constructs blocks. They were just like, it was just like, a erector set, but like made out of plastic, and just like, I always loved the concept of songwriting. I always loved songs, always loved the stories they told. And so when I was about 15, I got my copy of Axis Bold as Love. And I think that was the thing that really, really just struck me as being a piece of artistic writing. And the thing that I did, which is something I tell students or colleagues of mine when they ask me for songwriting advice, I'm like, I just started writing pastiches of a lot of the songs on that record. And like then later Tori Amos and a few other people, like just having those people's voices in my head and sort of doing a thing I later learned in college was like a very Dada poetry exercise, which was like just like learning by not exactly copying, but just by like letting yourself be fully and truly influenced by something and writing your own version of something or writing words to somebody else's cadence. Songs that I threw out, of course, I don't even know where they are or where they would be. And I have a lot of my old notebooks, but I don't remember writing my own song about my own life until I was maybe 17 or 18.
Wow.
And that is a song that sticks in my head. Never performed it, never will, but it's mine. And that was like, I had a bunch of, I guess I started recording my own songs and like really writing between the ages of 17 and 19. That's when I started to find a voice that made sense to me. And the first songs were like, some of them were just like, about me being like a frustrated, like horny 17-year-old in love with every lesbian I saw.
Right.
And some of them were like about my car because I also loved the Beach Boys.
Sure.
I had a 1966 Ford. All
right.
It was such a cool car. But there came a point in my life where the first really good song I think I ever wrote was a political song, which was this small independent business in my hometown. Like I basically grew up in what is essentially like a small southern town in the middle of like 18 miles outside of New York. It's called Maplewood, New Jersey. It's a really interesting place. Now it's a very affluent area. At the time it wasn't, but it's one of the few places in North America where the downtown doesn't have a stoplight.
Oh, wow.
And I meet very few people who've grown up in no stoplight towns.
Right.
And so I didn't realize how common that was for the rest of the country until I started touring in my mid-20s. I was like, this is why country music makes sense.
Yeah.
This is where I grew up.
Yeah.
But it was the Five and Dime store, and it was the last of an old Five and Dime chain, and it was owned by the same family for 70 years. And like they were forced out, and I wrote a song about landlord greed and all of this stuff. And I remember just like being in the middle of the country, like writing it like in a tent, like at a fish show or something stupid like that.
That's okay.
I was such a little deadhead.
Yeah.
And there was something there. And then I started writing introspective songs. And like I was always searching for something.
Sure.
And I'm trans. And so, I don't want to talk about being trans too much because like whatever. But, there was always something I was searching for. And I was trying to figure that part of myself out. And it took me a while. It took me a long while to figure that out. But that was a lot of my sort of like, when people talk about your journey, quote unquote, it's like a lot of my journey was like really delving into the back of my mind.
Right.
And then I got really turned on to folk music, and then everything changed.
Wow. Do you consider yourself, I'm sorry to interrupt, do you consider yourself a guitar player first and then you found songwriting and found your voice? Or how did that work out? Or at the same time?
Kind of the same time-ish. I don't remember consciously trying to write songs at first.
Sure.
I just wanted to play guitar and rock. And I didn't quite know what that meant at the time. And I would just like hang out in my attic and like jam. It's funny. I'm a songwriter above everything, but I'm a guitar player first.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
The two sit, they're like, left hand, right hand.
Your development with your friends sitting in a basement, jamming along to Grateful Dead records, that's just a primer in how to improv and really an impressive way to go about it. But then your impetus to go to Berklee, was that to become a better guitar player or just to understand more about music in general?
I went to Berklee because I thought it would be a cool place to go. Like, I had this friend who's still my friend. She lives in Nashville, I think. I don't even remember. I haven't seen Karen forever. But Karen was a studio engineer, and I remember reading the John McDermott book about Jimi Hendrix, and Jimmy talking about how one of the things he loved about working with Eddie Kramer was that, and this is an Eddie Kramer quote, is that, "That's it, Eddie. That's the sound I hear in my dreams. And I dream in color and I dream in music a lot of the time." And, I wake up out of sleep. I'm writing songs in my sleep a lot. And I decided that I never wanted to be in a situation where I didn't know how to actualize that sound or didn't know how to, describe it. And at the same time, I just, started getting to, home recording a little bit. And so I wound up interning at a recording studio and, really getting into recording. I spent my entire senior year of high school doing work study, technically work study, but really just me going to New York, doing awful things all night and just wrapping cables in recording studios in between 1995 and 1998. And that was the thing that really just blew me away, was recording. And I was their MP&A program, their music production and engineering program, really appealed to me. And then I'm one of the few people who went to Berklee not for performance, and guitar was my instrument there, but I didn't really develop my own learning style until I left Berklee. And I went to writing school. I have a degree in creative writing. And I also went to Mannes College of Music too for a couple of semesters just to do some orchestral stuff.
Right.
But at Berklee, it was all about developing my voice in the studio and learning how to shape that and use that as a canvas. Because to this day, it's my studio work is often very different from my live performance. I'm really influenced by The Who. And that's the thing. It's Pete Townsend sits in his house and figures out how to do shit. Pete Townsend is such an underrated synth god, and you hear Tommy. I wrote a rock opera 2 years later, right? When I was 17. But that's why
my favorite record.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah,
and it's
best.
And so that was the reason I went to Berklee. And because Al Cooper was teaching there at the time, I tried to really hard to... You were bringing up Al. I was just I had a very distinct memory of my friend Peter Wolf had pulled some strings because I had apparently missed the deadline because I was maybe in my second semester. I had missed some deadline to get into his personal production class. And I was I got to get into this. This is really important to me because he's one of my production heroes. And somehow Peter wrangled me getting into the office with Al Cooper. And so I'm put together and I'm wearing nice clothes and I'm very humble. And I was "Mr. Cooper, it's such a real honor to meet you. Peter speaks very highly of you." He's "Yeah. I was yeah. So Pete mentioned if there's a possibility of getting into your class, you're doing what I want to do. And I really want to get into that. And he was just "Well, there's no room for you."
Really?
So he was kind of, I know. It was one of those moments where it's I've met a lot of my heroes, and for the most part, they're all really nice guys.
Yeah.
I met Les Paul when I was 20.
Oh, that's
and,
awesome.
He was just he was so sweet. And I've just been lucky enough to meet all these cool cats and shake their hands and say thank you, which is to me the ultimate compliment.
Absolutely.
It
sucks when you meet them and they're like that. They say don't meet your heroes. And that's why I've never met Pete Townsend. I want to meet Pete Townsend so bad because he's ultimate idol. He's the reason I play guitar, the whole thing.
Oh my God.
And it's funny you just mentioned him because he's my everything. And I'm just afraid if I met him, if he was an asshole, it would destroy my life.
I mean, well, I don't think he'd be an asshole. I think he'd be Pete Townsend.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Bro, be Zach, I understand that you admire my guitar playing, but you know what? And throws a guitar across the room.
Which would be kind of great.
Throws your guitar across.
Which would be great.
Yeah, and the thing is, I want to open for The Who.
Yeah.
And The Who, over the last few years, Roger and Pete have asked queer women specifically to open for them.
Cool.
So I'm just
so great.
I'm just I want that to happen.
I saw Joan Jett open for them, and that was...
Yeah.
I have a buddy that plays drums for Joan Jett now, and I asked him what it was like. He was like, dude, you didn't really see them at all? He goes, but when you did, they were actually really, really nice. I was like, that's crazy. Yeah. It's awesome. Well, good luck. Yeah, I'm pulling for you.
Thank you. very much. It's been cool.
Yeah.
It's been a cool ride the last couple of years. So anything could happen.
So what's next? What do you have? Something coming up? Tours? What's going on? Releases?
I have an album in the can. I'm currently label shopping. I left my last label, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I'm working. I'm like this close to like finding a new label that I like, but I've got a couple of singles I'm sitting on, and like half of a more like. My last record was called Rhinestone Tomboy. For those of you listening who don't know, and it was extremely acclaimed, and like I'm very lucky that people liked it. I'm very influenced by like country, blues, and punk, and it's all over. That's on the record, but I recorded a logical follow-up to it, and then I don't want to relaunch with a new label with that record.
Gotcha.
And so I just started recording kind of a harder, more back to my roots, live in the studio with a power trio.
That's great.
Kind of record. Yeah, and so that's, I think, going to be my next release. It's just a bit more stripped down.
With your recording knowledge and with the Berklee training and all, do you record your own records as well?
I do. I have. My partner, Swan Royale, is the composer for a podcast called 99% Invisible. So
wow.
When we started living with each other, we just kind of combined our efforts and like built like a really nice little studio in our house.
Amazing.
So I will produce artists here. I'll record my own stuff. But it's funny because like I was saying, even though that I have all this recording knowledge and I have recorded a lot of my own stuff, I vastly prefer being produced by other artists or like working with people I trust.
Sure.
and hearing their vision based on what I'm doing. And I've been lucky enough to just become really good friends with a lot of producer engineers that I really love and respect and trust, because I'm like a little puppy in the studio. I'm just like, what do you think?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's great because it becomes collaborative. And what are we? But collaborators.
Yeah,
I think that's what's great about music is like we all have this sort of common vernacular, just immediately. Even if we never met each other, and that experience is so. We used a new producer this last record, a woman named Catherine Marks, and she was just amazing and it's so different than anybody we had worked with, and it was so rewarding. But anyway. It's just not about me. So gear-wise, since we talked, yeah, I know, right? We talked about gear before we were on, and so I'm going to have you repeat some things. But am I wrong in thinking that there is acoustic portions and electric portions? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and kind of like I always describe what I do as sort of like Neil Young Crazy Horse and Neil Young solo.
Yeah.
Because I play solo a lot, which is really nice. And my main acoustic guitar right now is a Gibson El Dolo.
Oh, wow.
That I got from Gibson in 2022 on my birthday, which was like, I was
nice.
like, oh man,
It's very nice.
I was in Nashville and it like arrived on my birthday. I was like, are you freaking
That's
kidding
amazing.
me? Brand new freaking, yeah, because I just needed something for South by and they just sent me this beautiful guitar and I still play it. Then I'm an aficionado of guilds. I have a lot of 70s guilds.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really cool. I've got a
Neil
couple
Young.
that I use for my...
Neil Young.
Oh.
There's a famous picture of Neil Young with this one guild that I
I
it's
do know
burned
that
in my
picture,
head.
yeah.
Our singer got one because of that picture, and so I'm just like, yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and then my first acoustic is a Martin acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
My grandma gave me money to buy. And I
Wow.
bought half of it with money that she gave me and half of it with money for my first job, and I will never part with that.
And you still
guitar.
have it. That's
was
great.
Yeah, I bought it from my local music store, and then the reason I got into guilds was that it cracked. Oh. It's still technically under warranty because I'm the first owner. It's one of only two brand new guitars I've ever owned,
Right.
that and the Gibson LOO. And so the top has cracked multiple times, and it finally got stable this year, but I don't know what happened. But when that guitar had its first massive crack, I was off being repaired, and I was like, I don't have any money and I need a guitar. And I went down to 30th Street Guitars, which is my favorite music store here in New York. I've been going there since I was like 19.
I love that place. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Matt Brewster. Shout out to Matt Brewster and Jimmy Archie and Nate. It's like I've known all of them forever, but like Matt has seen me like literally since I was a teenager. I used to go in there. And so Matt's like got this 1960s guild up on the wall, and I traded him a couple of things, and my community, like a few people in my community, like lent me money.
Wow.
Because at the time I was hosting a pretty popular open mic in the city, and people were like, you can't not have a guitar for people to play or for yourself to play. And That was my first guild, and I loved it.
Wow.
And I miss it. It was stolen.
Ah,
Yeah, it was stolen 10 years ago in April, and I'm about to get its freaking serial number like tattooed on my knuckles or something. I still have hope. It's a 1965 or 66 red cherry sunburst F30 Aragon. If you found a guitar on Crescent Street in Queens, New York, in April of 2015 or whenever the hell it was, that's my guitar. I really want it back.
that's Mya's guitar, everyone. Well, it's funny. I always ask people, do you have one that got away? And that was my next question. But you just, that's a great one. That's a terrible one, but it's also, you answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other guitars that got away where it's like, oh, there was like a 66 Strat for sale that I could have afforded or something like that. But I mean, whatever. I'm really lucky. I've got some really great vintage gear, which is, that has just come to me over the years. And I used a 1942 Gibson LG2 Banner guitar. It was lent to me by my friend John Thomas, who is one of the writers for Fretboard Journal.
Okay.
I met him a couple of years ago at a conference, and he was like, I like you. I want to lend you my guitar for 2 years. I was like, okay.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks.
And it's just literally a guitar that went to the Pacific in World War II.
Wow.
Who gets to do that? It's just I'm like, what? He's like, I just want to get this guitar into everybody's hands.
I would just be so afraid I'd break it.
I did break it. I wake up one day and I keep my house humidified and whatever. And I wake up one day and I kept it on the wall because my partner Swan and we played it every single day.
Wow.
It's one of the greatest guitars I've ever played. And one day I wake up and it's got a tiny little crack, right here on the neck.
Whoa.
And I was like, what am I going to do? And I just sent John a photo. I was like, John, please tell me this was on your guitar or about to happen. He's like, it wasn't on the guitar, but it's long overdue for a neck reset. And so right now it's at Brooklyn Luthiery, which is my other favorite guitar place in New York, a guitar repair shop. Mamie Mensch, who's a wonderful guitar player and old-time music player. There's actually on hers and Stu Mac's Insta right now, they're actually restoring the guitar. So it's actually kind of cool. The neck needed a reset, but it turns out the bridge plate wasn't original. And so they're doing this whole dissection of the guitar online. And I saw it and I was like, and I texted John, I'm like, John, did you see it? It's on this one. And Mamie's a friend. And it's been a nice thing.
That's amazing.
For me to break a $10,000 guitar, I didn't break it. It just weather.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a freaking 82-year-old guitar. It was bound to happen. I'm glad it happened on your watch.
That's great.
That's the kind of trust that people put into me, and that's something that I'm really grateful for.
Well, and it's just we the commune of musicians and also just people like that, like this man you're talking about. We need those people. I need those people. 30th Street Guitars. When I was younger, I had a yellow SG. This is in the 90s. I had a yellow SG, and it was a weird 80s model where the toggle switch was above the pot. Oh, do you know what I mean?
That's the other one of mine that got away.
Yes.
I had an 85.
So yes. So it's that weird. So they weren't, and they had the weird little block inlays. So it was a standard SG, but the toggle switch wasn't in between the knobs and the pick guard. It was on top. And this was a yellow. It was like a sonic yellow. It was a weird 80s color. Well, the headstock broke and blah, 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 and I got rid of it. And then they had that guitar at 30th Street Guitars one time. And they had $1,700 on it. This was 10 years ago maybe. And I didn't get it, and it bugged me forever. And I went back, that year we were on tour still, and we went back through, and it was gone. I was like, motherfucker. Anyway.
I vaguely remember that guitar.
You know what I'm talking about?
Because I do, because the same night that my guild got stolen, my 85 SG got stolen, and that was same thing. It was the first Gibson electric I ever physically owned.
Yeah.
The first one I really played a lot was a 76 or 78 Les Paul Custom, which weighed 13 pounds.
Yeah, those were heavy.
But it had that perfect Norlin neck.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. They were just, and they're 87 to 91 is a good year too of Gibsons.
It is.
We have an 87 SG Special, which has the same body shape and neck joint as that 80s SG that you're talking about. I think it's the 19th fret body joint, which they did until very recently on certain guitars, and now they're all just using the 22 fret neck joint, which I don't like because they go out of tune.
Right, I'm with you.
Yeah, and it's something that I've talked to Gibson about. I'm like, if I were to do a signature SG or something like that, or a made to measure or a mod shop, I'm like, I've actually spec'd it out to them. This is what I want, and it's basically that guitar. But yeah, and then I've got a 91. Is it a 91 or 92? a Les Paul Studio Light,
Oh.
which has the same neck. It's like that 1968, late 70s, really skinny, but like, it feels like a late 60s Strat neck, but not that wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just perfect necks.
You know that there's the Peter Frampton, like the Phoenix Les Paul. It's like his three humbucker or whatever. Well, that one has the Frampton taper. Apparently on that original guitar, it's a super thin on both sides, neck. Somebody found it, like the Phoenix, because the story is that plane crashed, his equipment plane, and somebody in South America had it for a long time. And somebody like 30 years later said, I found your guitar. And he went down and he said he just touched the neck and realized it was his guitar. Well, they make that neck. So, with Gibson now, with their made to spec and made to order and all that, you can have that neck put on there. And it's funny, at 30th Street Guitars, I was just there a few months ago, and they had one of the Peter Frampton guitars, but it was like you had to ask the guy to like come and do it. And I don't want to bug him. And I just felt the neck to see if it was true. And it's true. So I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that was a nice guitar. I remember that one. I didn't play it, but like I did the same thing. I was like, what does the neck feel like on that one?
I know.
Yeah, they've got some nice, and I got both of those two guitars at 30th Street.
Wow.
But if we're traversing to guitar shops, let's talk about Johnny at Oakland Guitars, because talking about trust, like Johnny, literally, we were just there a few weeks ago, and my partner also plays drums in my band and in another band called K Moy, and is one of the best drummers I've ever played with. And we both love The Who so much. Like, she's the only person I know who really can play like Keith Moon.
Wow.
We covered Live at Leeds for Halloween this year. It was amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And it got me to the point where I'm like, please don't ever play with a hi-hat on my songs.
Right, just
like,
crashes.
I will play with a hi-hat on your...
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're both obsessed with like 69 to 72, Who.
Me too.
It's the best.
This is why Johnny Morales. I think this is why Johnny put us together. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's like so. But so he had some snares there, and like Swan's been looking for a new snare. She's got a really nice old Slingerland, but it's not falling apart, but it's just a little bit. It's like all vintage gear. It's a little bit dodgy, because it's old. It's old. Right. There's no such thing as like, it's like if you buy a car, even if it's a car that's 1,000 miles on it from 1975, it's still going to be like, you still need to overhaul it. Yeah. And like, I've got vintage guitars that play great and I trust them, but like, I don't take them on the road.
Sure.
And
you never know.
A lot of my, it's like Swan was traveling with like my 1972 Vista Light snare, and I was like, I have it insured, but I don't really like it like being in the hold of a plane or something. Yeah. Like, it's perfectly fine, but I'm like, if that cracks, that's done for. It. And she was looking for something that was a little more like ska pingy too, because she plays in this one ska band. And Johnny's like, hey, look in that case, and it's a black acrolite that they made in the 90s.
Wow.
It's Ludwig. I'm sorry to if I'm going too much hard into drum.
Please.
He's like, yeah, son, just take it home and see if you like it.
Wow.
And like, that's the kind of thing Johnny does, for people he loves. And that's what they do at 30th Street. Like, by the way, the next time you go to 30th Street, the man's name is Jimmy Archie.
Jimmy, okay.
He's a very, very sweet man. Tell him you're my friend.
Okay.
But like,
I didn't want to bother him. I just, I didn't want to do the thing, and he was busy.
Job.
Okay.
That's what he
I know. But you're right. You're right.
Yeah. His job is to make people like us have a good time.
No, you're right.
And I don't drink, so all I do is spend my days.
Me too.
It's like Oh, yeah. I've been sober for 5 years.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I just I don't go to bars. I go to guitar shops.
Yeah, me too.
And hang out there. Yeah. But
thankfully they're there.
Yeah, they are. But that's the thing. And it's like, I've had a good enough relationship with these guitar shops and these individuals that they'll be like, yeah, take this guitar home for the weekend and check it out. Hey, Swan, fly back to New York with this beautiful, like somewhat rare Galaxy Sparkle Ludwig drum set. And like, we just have to pay, and Swan's like, oh yeah, this is the one.
This is,
and like,
oh, did she keep it?
Oh, she totally kept it. We played with it the other day. It's amazing.
Thank you, Johnny Morales. So what's next for you? What's next? Tours? Anything? What you got?
I am going to be. I actually have surgery in like 2 weeks, and I'm just like working on being mentally prepared to I've had a bunch of surgery in the last couple of years, and just to and so not to get too personal or whatever. It's just like after 40, things happen to your body, but like I'm just concentrating on recovering from that and building out my new record. And then in terms of touring, I'm I'm working on just getting some opening slots with some larger artists and doing some acoustic tours, and then hopefully I'd like to be in a place by the end of the year where I can like at least do a small headline tour with my band, and like I probably could, but I'm not going to like sleep on floors anymore.
Right.
So I'm really hoping to get in with at this point I've worked with like all of the large booking agencies as an opener. So I'm like really hoping that more things like that can start to happen. There's a lot of hope that's going on right now. I'm sort of in this very liminal place, and that's really my plan, is to just be okay with that, which is hard to say. Like I'm doing a lot of like actual work. I'm presenting a program on like the presence of like trans people and how it relates to blackness in country music. I'm working on that with the GLBT Historical Society in California. Great. I work with an organization called Traction in Seattle to support people who are like what I've been calling the internal refugee crisis in the United States, where people have to leave unfortunately, places like Texas and like Florida and come to New York and come to Seattle and California, and helping get them rehoused. That's a lot of my do-gooder work, but is also like, it's something I'm good at. Is like, right before we had this session, I was recording video and audio for one of our presentations, which is really cool. But that's an adjunct of the work that I do, which is just playing music.
Yeah, but so I want more people like you on my podcast, because most people on my podcast are like, well, I fucking play guitar. But you are doing really, really amazing work for your community and for people that look up to you and might be wanting to know how they can also have a voice and talk about their struggles, talk about their life, and do their things, and just, be a person that plays music. Anyway, that's incredibly commendable, and wow, it's very impressive. That's very impressive.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, it's inspiring to me. I won't take up much more of your time. I feel like I made a friend, Mya.
I feel like it's all the above.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll be in New York in March. Well, I don't know when this is, and that's another thing. I don't know when these roll out, but this will probably be after March. I don't know. But I will look you up, and we'll talk about more guitar stuff.
Yeah. I'm here pretty much the whole month of March. I'll probably like do some one-offs and whatever. But I would absolutely love to hang out with you in New York and shoot the shit. Come over. Let's like fucking write a song.
Let's do. Oh, that'd be great. And we can go to 30th Street Guitars.
It'd be my pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Mya. I would have said Maya, but Mya or Mimi Byrne. And anyone, go pick up anything you see of Mya Byrne's music. Your latest record was Rhinestone Tomboy. So please, everyone, check that out.
Where the hell did it go?
There it is.
It's a great record.
I bet it is.
It's been featured everywhere, and I
listened to it, and it is a great record.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk to you soon, Mya.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. I've said what an amazing artist Mya Byrne is. The songwriting is just unbelievable, and she is such a fantastic guitar player. Man, she really knows her stuff too. Jesus Christ. I really do look forward to seeing Mya in New York City and going to 30th Street and all the wonderful guitar stores there. And I'm sure we'll nerd out and talk for hours, just like we just did. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to leave you with some of Mya's wonderful guitar playing here at the end and songwriting. Again, the record is called Rhinestone Tomboy, and as you heard, Mya does have a new record. I chose the song Autumn Sun really specifically for the songwriting, because to me, this is reminiscent of George Harrison's work with the Beatles, or even his solo stuff. Stylistically, this record's just all over the place. We talked about metal and country and the Grateful Dead and the Beatles and punk, a lot of punk rock. But man, this song, Autumn Sun, for me just stood out for the writing. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The solo, I did talk to Mya toward the end. There is a guitar solo. It's not Mya, so I wanted to make sure. But I unfortunately did not get the artist to credit, so I feel terrible about that. But again, check out Rhinestone Tomboy. Check out this song, Autumn Sun. It's just an amazingly written song. And check out Mya Byrne. Again, Mya is the exact type of guest I want on this podcast. I want somebody that is doing it for all the right reasons in their own corner and is not getting enough recognition, and I think they should. And it took Johnny Morales introducing me to Mya, but I'm so glad I asked, and I'm so glad Johnny gave me her contact. Hope you enjoyed that. So here at the end, I am going to give a shout out to the wonderful folks at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals. Find out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. And the guys at DistroKid. They're helping you and me get our music on streaming platforms and cutting out the middleman. Thanks for listening. I'll keep doing them, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Different shade of morning, autumn sun, sky quilted ocean where the clouds hung. In the depths of the beginning of the year to end, all around you glasses raise a toast to you, my friend. Time to love what you have sown, embrace what you disown. Seasons are changing as we all go changing along. Tides catching rhythm, autumn sun, from a light within them where the moon is from. In the faded horizon of the night's early rise, with the wind chime